Hello, hello, good afternoon. Uh-oh, already got an error. So much for my new computer being better. Um, no idea why I've got that error. Maybe I'll close some stuff down again. Don't trust it. I have basically realised anyway with my upgrading of my computer and all that it's me, not the computer. So whatever I'm doing, or I've got some secret hidden virus, although I've done 8 million virus scans, that's causing me problems. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and hope some people join, and then they can tell me if it's any problem with it. Okay, so I wanted to mainly look at alts in this session. But obviously because Bitcoin's dropped and we've got some big changes in the market, well, TradFi as well, I thought I would just quickly cover off Bitcoin and Ether. But obviously I did the video on that early this week, and basically it's the same. And also I did some updates in the Telegram channel. Gosh, it does make me nervous that I'm not receiving enough video to maintain a smooth stream. Yeah, but there's not much I can do about it. Yeah, so quickly on TradFi. So I've commented in, I think, more in chat, so I can't remember if I talked about it in the video or not, but I probably did. But obviously I've been waiting for quite a long time for NASDAQ and S&P and all the others to kind of pull a move that's going to take out all of this run up here. We do have 3 months, 2 months demand, but you can see there's gaps throughout the price action all the way up. So there's gaps all the way down to the bottom. And then there's untested zones throughout the entire run up. And obviously, NASDAQ and the rest of the indices can do what they like. They're quite, obviously, but when they get bullish, they can be very bullish and they can take a long time to come back down again. But typically they do come back down again. Whether they come back down, whether we're here and we're going to get a run like this immediately off this top, or whether we're going to get some consolidation that's going to allow re-entries. If this is the top, I should still say if, then that's yeah, that remains to be seen. So at the moment, NASDAQ is still on 4-day demand, and I had this alerted earlier. You can see all the trend line stops below. There's another 4-day down here, and then that 3 monthly a lot lower. So I'm just waiting to see what the reaction. We did have quite a good reaction off this earlier, which I thought was gonna. It wasn't great actually, and you just came up to hourly supply. It looked better when you just saw it with the wick earlier. But obviously it's dwindled back down again. I did say it was a bit of a risk in this zone because of even the trend line stops here. So even if it comes down a bit deeper, the fact it hasn't bounced quickly here isn't ideal. And basically it's the same for all of them. And we had confluence with a few of them, like NASDAQ, S&P, JP225, Russell, and Aussie, where it was a little bit higher, but they all hit alerts. EU50's in a kind of an older daily zone, and I've always been more bearish on that anyway. And the other UK 100 is more bullish. The Dow I thought could go further. It's in a 2 month demand, but it's obviously got this run here with the lower time frame demands below that it hasn't tested yet, and we have 2 week highs and 3 month in there a little bit lower. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if this drops some more, and obviously it looks like it's doing that right now. The Dow is also going to make weekly supply, whereas I don't think the others will. EU50 will. Trying to remember, I kind of did update these earlier. I think Russell might as well. But yeah, so we need to be a little bit conscious that these could run lower, and if they do, then they might take Bitcoin lower. So yeah, I just want to talk about that quickly. Similarly, the other thing that's been driving a lot of PA at the moment is the strength in the dollar this week, because we've seen, when I compare Bitcoin US dollar to Bitcoin Korea dollar, Korean won, sorry, that you've seen the Korean pair look a lot more bullish than the US dollar pair. Just lower time frame, they're both in the range. But part of that has been because of the strength of the dollar, which then drags the BTC US dollar chart down. I don't necessarily think the Korean won is particularly strong. Maybe it is. I haven't checked the chart, but it's mainly because of that strength in the US. Sorry, pretty weak in the terms of the Korean won. Yeah, this strength here is what's dragged Bitcoin lower relative to the Korea pair. And this potentially is going to continue. So obviously we've had a drop today. We had NFP and we had manufacturing ISM. And that's what's pulled the prices down today. And generally you don't counter trade NFP. So it's going to be interesting as to what this does in the next, the start of next week. Yeah, so I would, yeah, with the case of, in the case of the dollar, I still ideally would, now it's had this big move. And as you know, if you follow me, this hit yearly demand at that low there, which we were waiting for quite a while. So it's unsurprising. It took its time about it, but it's unsurprising. It's finally done a decent move. Up here, I've alerted 3-month and 6-month supply because those, obviously it's coming off a yearly demand and it can go significantly higher inside that. It's a massive zone. And it's also left the gap up here and various other untested zones near the top. But at least I would like this to go a little bit higher to get a bit more of a move before reacting and maybe coming and retesting this low. So we'll see on that. In the case of Bitcoin, just quickly on the data, there's been some interesting things. So yeah, just starting on Bitcoin now. So the data. So one thing I noticed yesterday, which was interesting, and I need to keep an eye on this. I haven't seen this before, but possibly I just haven't noticed, is what was happening in throughout this whole consolidation that we've had over the last few days, or that's the last week. Everybody's been shorting the bottom. So there are a lot of shorts that came in here, and literally at the bottom. And every other bottom subsequently, you can just see the little spikes in this in the shorts have been every bottom. But what we didn't have was people shorting the top. And I think, you know, while everybody and myself including were expecting the price to go up and take out all the trend line stops above, it hasn't had the shorts to do that. So there's been no squeeze. And maybe shorts are already in from up there. I mean, there's certainly liquidations up there, but there weren't the shorts coming in at the top in order to push this higher. And similarly, you can see longs have just died, like nobody's been longing, including today. In addition, we had ETF buying has died off from BlackRock. Well, there was a little bit early this week, but the last 2 days is gone. And then we had some selling coming in from ARK yesterday. And we may have some more selling coming in from ARK just here. I'm not sure. Again, this Arkham data has become less reliable. It matched quite well previously with the end of day data that I just showed, but recently it hasn't, or it's been much less reliable. So I've kind of stopped using it, but I still have a skim of it just to see. So you know, but even if I look at ARK yesterday, I know there's a sell, and I don't see that sell in the ARK data at all. But now I do see that. But so this is a transfer to Coinbase, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a sell. It could mean they're preparing for a sell, or maybe they're just moving money around. That makes it hard to judge. And similarly, again, if you follow me, you'll know like Grayscale has done a lot of moving around. So you can see Grayscale here is just what they're transferring to themselves. But go down to the Grayscale data. No, there's nothing to show there at the moment, but Grayscale frequently just moves money between wallets, and that's all shown in here. But then when I look at the end of the day data, I'll see 0. So it's not necessarily that reliable. In the case of liquidations, this is an interesting thing. Okay, so I just saw this is the liquidations that we normally look at. Just refresh that. But I saw down here at the bottom that we had this new data legend and liquidation max pain, which I thought was kind of interesting to look at. We've got a chunk of liquidations at 117,000, and then later 118,000, and then there were a lot at 120. So I'm not sure this is the lower time frame, and this is Bybit as well. Actually, let me just put it back to Binance. Yeah, so just under 117,000 now, and obviously some liquidations below. If you look at the higher time frames, they're a bit different. But yeah, the new data is interesting. So this, if you click those links at the bottom right, let me just reload this. Hopefully that will come back. Okay, so yeah, it gives you for each time period, you can just look at the max pain figure. So that's kind of an interesting, new piece of data to, I don't know if it's going to add really much more value than the chart, but if you're feeling lazy and can't read a chart, then perhaps you can look at these, and this is where you would look, that once all those shorts have been liquidated, or maybe you take profit on your long at a similar point, or if once those shorts have been liquidated, then you look at entering a short, and similarly for the longs at the bottom end. What I did think was interesting is this legend. So I haven't looked at this yet, so I haven't even clicked try it now. I just saw it a minute before the stream. Yeah, it says, elite super chart tools, liquidity heat maps, and real-time order flow insights like footprint and large trades. So I'm going to investigate this because this might be more useful. And obviously we've had a lot of problems with Trading Light. And while the data's back now on Trading Light, there hasn't been any sign of giving us, there's been months of while they were still taking our money, but not giving us data. And there hasn't been any sign of refunding or giving any free time to compensate. So I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, there's walls down at 110k. This is kind of where a lot of people seem to be looking to long. At the moment, I think I've got thoughts at a similar level, but I'll go and have a look at that quickly in a moment. Yeah, it does feel like a bit like a crowded entry. So even if it does bounce there, be conscious that it might come back and take out that level before moving up, even if that's going to be the bottom. Yeah, so that's pretty much it on the data. I don't think it's much more that I've seen on there. So let's go on to the Bitcoin chart. Okay, so I did an update in the Telegram channel earlier, and I commented, and there's some things that have happened that I haven't managed to, or that I haven't done a video about since the last time I did a video. There's obviously things changing all the time. So the main thing that we had was CME created 4-day supply. It was only by a hair, but there's a big pink zone here. It was only by a hair, and it did come up inside it, but that was the sort of the most bearish thing that had happened lately. And as I said, like you can see here, how Korea was still grinding up whilst this was dropping, whilst we were dropping on the US dollar pair. But then that last bounce, and now it's still relatively higher, it's still in the range, whereas the US dollar pair is breaking out of the bottom of the range now. And US dollar dominance is obviously trying to break up now. So this is kind of what we were expecting, what we were looking for. It was awkward. And I don't know how many people got in short. So maybe that's why nobody was shorting up here, because everybody was waiting for these upper levels, much like I was. And it then therefore came down without us. And as always, I've been focusing more on alts anyway, and I threw in a couple of longs potentially to make a higher low in here yesterday, which just got run through. And I shouldn't have done that with hindsight, not knowing this CME had 4-day supply. Oh, the other thing was this BitMEX chart also did just about create 5-day supply. Closed on the level, or maybe just below. But somebody told me that I think the other exchanges hadn't created that 5-day supply, so I didn't put much stock in it at that point. Anyway, so just to quick reiterate what I said in the Telegram channel earlier, we've made 2-day supply here. My thoughts were, if we came up here, I'd be quite wary because of those trend line stocks. So if it does manage to get that high, then potentially we're going to run through some stuff. And also that would mean holding the range more bullish. So I said for the first area to look for possibility of shorts would be this green area, which is this 2-hour supply that was holding up the whole consolidation. Got some wick through here, wick into it here, and then came, and so I sort of said, like, watch here for potential short entries, and it's actually done a fairly easy rejection off there. I didn't actually alert it, just because it was bit of a short-term thing. And the string quality has improved, that's good. Yeah, so I think a lot of people are going to be longing in here at this CME close price, and that's why we're trying to bounce. And it hasn't quite, like, I've seen people report that it's closed the CME gap, and it hasn't quite. Doesn't necessarily have to be at that level. It does depend on whether the premium has changed since. But you can see the gap here, but the gap should be at the On the lower time frame, it's like at the, well, in this case, I've got the close of the 2 hour, that's normally the close of the hourly that I tend to use. But people are saying, oh, because it's hit the 4 hour demand there, this is a 4 hour demand, that it's closed, and or because it's hit the top wick, because they're measuring from there to the bottom wick. But for me, I do it more accurately, rightly or wrongly, like I don't know for what it's worth. I don't know. It doesn't have to come back here, but that for me is a proper gap close. So that would be my preference. Whether it's going to bounce there is another matter. Obviously now it's like trying to break down. It's rejected off this level, so it's struggling a little bit. Possibly given we almost closed it, I would have thought we would have a bit of a better bounce there. And back on the normal chart. So this is the 110k level that a lot of people are looking at and where the walls are. There's a 4-day demand, so that's the first demand really, before we start like breaking down or start doing a bigger consolidation. If we're bullish, we should bounce here or above, possibly on this 12 hour in here. So there's various levels you can watch. This 4-day would be kind of the first area that I'd start looking, but then there's a lot of chop through here. So we've got, I think there's a 2-week there, the big blue, and then there's a 3-week inside that, and possibly even a weekly there as well. Weekly and a 3-week a little bit lower, and then various range things. So maybe we'll come back down and test the bottom of the range. But if it's really bullish, then it should be bouncing off the top, and the 61 fib is close to that cross. So we'll see. Lower down we have 3-month demand. So if we get a significant drop, which is always possible, I'm trying to think. We didn't make a monthly. No, we didn't make a new monthly on Bitcoin, but there is a monthly level also by this cross, and that was kind of one of the areas that I wanted to test it ages ago but didn't get. So yeah, the 101 kind of level, I think that is, 102 for me is of interest as well. But I don't like when we don't test zones, like when things don't come back properly. And unfortunately, Bitcoin can do that. And in most cases with alts and with FX, and all those other things, eventually they tend to come back. But Bitcoin, while it will come back, it can also, so for example, like here, it didn't quite test this level. I do think it will come back to that level, but it can also go to 100, 150, 200k before it does. So that's not very helpful necessarily. But either way, those are the sort of provisional levels I'm looking at. And then my higher probability and higher time frame levels would be this 3-month, which also conveniently is the 61 fib. So around there is actually my preference, but whether we get there and how quickly we get there is anybody's guess. But either way, like we were hoping for a better bounce today, and to close back up in range. At the moment, it doesn't look like we're getting that, but we still have quite a few hours to go, so I guess we'll see. It's also possible here we create a weekly supply, but this is going to be a challenge to trade potentially, because I mean, the weekly supply I would measure all the way up to the top of the wick, but that starts at that black level. But with those trend line stops, like it's hard to know, are we going to get a rejection in this area, or are we going to wick back up through before dropping? And also, I guess the other consideration is, are we still bullish? At the moment, this is just potentially a consolidation pattern, which my preference is that it comes down and tests demand before it moves, but it doesn't have to. Similar to here, similar to other examples that I've showed before. So yeah, I guess we'll see. That's pretty much it on Bitcoin. Ether, again, I only updated this very briefly in the Telegram channel because I haven't looked at the detail on it. The only thing I know on Ether and a lot of the majors to consider is that it has made a new monthly demand, and the BTC pair has as well. So again, if we get the big drop, 2500 area is the area you really want to hold. And Ether is a challenge because it is still in this big 3-month supply, even though it's come virtually to the top a bit. So again, hard to know at this point. It could still have done, completion of that up move and come all the way back down into here and or lower because of this 3-month supply plays out. Again, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. So initially I would just be looking around here. There's a few stops in there, so be a bit cautious. But if we get down there, and at the moment, that's obviously a very high time frame. At the moment, this is still holding a 3-day demand here. It's come down very deep inside it. It looks like it might break, but at the moment it's still holding. I have been more aggressive on the short here, because it doesn't have those stops like Bitcoin does, so it's not really aggressive now. It hasn't got back up there, but so I had put an alert for the daily supply, and then we have the alert down here just locally, and I just want to see what the reaction is here. Right, really, I think for me, I need more time to see what the consolidation is going to do here. Like this being red, I'll make it black. Yeah, so I really want more time to see what the consolidation is going to do here. Similar to here, if we're going to have hopefully something that's going to give more time. But, you know, compared to here, you can see we're very, very early. And while we might get a rejection there on that daily, then we just need to see what happens. And it could just consolidate through here before moving up. So I don't want to say for sure that we're going down to 2,500 now. I don't think there's anything that tells me that, other than a couple of red days. But we'll have to see. And additionally, on Ether BTC, like I would have preferred a bit higher. So if I was going to be bearish and think this is going to be a big move down, I would have preferred it to come up into here. Like it has, you know, hit this daily supply. We are at the 70 fib, slightly dubious fib because it's hard to know what the wave is to actually measure. But again, like, are we going to get, you know, something more like that, you know, whether this comes down into here or whether it just bounces somewhere in the middle, and then for the final wave for the test before the bigger move. Sorry, I didn't mean to make that break the low. It doesn't necessarily break the low, but potentially coming down to test the low here. I'm unsure. And again, you can see similar here in the consolidation. So yeah, that's Ether. Just a little update on some of the zones and levels I'm looking at. On the lower time frame, just to be transparent, so I didn't have any. I think I did talk in the last video about looking for a long on this 4 hour here, and it came wicked quite down deep inside it, so that was a decent entry eventually. And I had put in the channel that I thought I didn't like the confluence with Ether, although it turned out not to have very good confluence anyway, and I said it could probably go a lot deeper in the zone, and there were a couple of 10 minutes down the bottom that hadn't been tested. These two I was hoping for the higher low, and similar to how we had, obviously things don't have to play out exactly the same, but similar to how we had here, that we had, yeah, so we had this, right place. Yeah, we had this big drop. Oops. We had this big drop and then the retest. And then when we came back down for the second retest, and around here would be sort of the equivalent to here, then we went up again, and then we did have some sideways bouncing. So I guess what I was hoping here is that we get some sideways bouncing at least, and maybe go and take out that supply up there, or take out the trend line, but we didn't. Just fell off a cliff. So it's pretty nasty move there. And similarly on Ether, so whoops, I had lower time frame. So we've had some good entries for shorts throughout, which is nice, because obviously we've been in major supply right at the top of the drop down, so it's worth looking for shorts, even just to get shorts in the range, and preferably lower. I did have these two entries as possibilities from yesterday, but unfortunately while we bounced, we didn't come back up. Here, I was hoping we'd come back up for that test of those, but we didn't get that. And then when Bitcoin had the low, when was that, Wednesday? What I wanted was for this arrow to hit on Wednesday, and when Bitcoin made the low, but it didn't. So we got slightly front run on there. I think the alert went, but it just was slightly higher than the zone I was looking for. Then we came down and hit that last night, but obviously by then we'd made 4 hour supply and then have rejected and now gone lower again. So haven't been great on the low time frame stuff, and you know, it tends to happen when I'm not really overly focused on it. So the next alert for below, as you've seen on the high time frame chart, is here for the 8 hour. Again, be aware there's a little trend line stops here, and there's 4 hour demand, so I don't necessarily think it's going to stop at this level. We could get a wick inside, and also I'm not going to love it if it hits at the weekend, because it's not going to close the CME gap if that's the case. And there's another CME gap up here, so and then potentially big drops, and I need to rethink the entries below. But yeah, if we do get some, you know, black swan giant red candle, there's 2,500 on this, and then 110 followed by dramatically 93 if it gets that low on Bitcoin. But Anyway, I've done more on that than I wanted to. That's 25 minutes, so let's move on. So one final thing on this, so US dollar dominance. From a confluence perspective, and I'm presuming this keeps going now, and we do get that breakdown on Bitcoin, because we are still very tenuous here. We're still in monthly demand, but I would like, so this red line, I don't want to move it because I like putting in what I drew previously, although argue I don't really, they're not exactly an exact science, but this has made monthly supply in here. So if we come up and test here, put across there so we can see, then I would look at where Bitcoin is in order to potentially get a bigger, if this drops back, and then test, whether or not I'm bullish or bearish overall at that point in time. But I would certainly expect a reaction somewhere around here. And then I would like to see where Bitcoin and Ether are at that time. So it's trying to get the confluence for the lows rather than just hypothesizing or giving a 100k range or 20 or 30k range and let people manage as they will. So moving on to alts, obviously the main point of this video. This is the others chart. So I had quite a few conversations about this. Again, if you follow me, you should know this has been my bias. It's not the probabilities, so don't freak out. And I do think, having said that, I do think those lines represent the higher probability. So we've got the macro double top, then we've got the slightly less macro head and shoulders. Then we've got what I thought was likely to be a bear flag here. Again, top could have been slightly higher, so uncertain, it may or may not be done here. But obviously it started the way I kind of wanted it to. Then I want to see, so this now has made a monthly demand here, so I do want to see the reaction in here. So while I've drawn this sideways bearish move, or sideways leading to bearish move, it could get a much more significant bounce now it's got a monthly demand. And maybe that would take it back up to here to test higher. I'm not sure, maybe then we get a 5-wave channel. And yeah, so I really just want to see on the lower time frame, we're coming into an area, this daily here, that we might get at least a temporary bounce on alts. And then I'm really kind of looking at watching this pattern. I'm hoping we get some really nice sideways tradable. I know crypto investors don't like it because they want to be in these huge runs. But if you look at the whole chart, these huge runs happen every few months or multiple years. If you're talking really, really big runs, I prefer this type of PA. This to me is useless. You can't get in unless you're studying charts on very low time frames. I prefer more, what do you call that? It's not more volatile. Yeah, I guess it is more volatile, whereas this is just a straight trending. Yeah, I prefer more volatile ranging PA, but over trending PA. So yeah, I want to see what happens if this gets down here. Might get an interim bounce here. What we've seen on a lot of alts is now that they've got 3-4 day supply up here. And I'll run through the majors really quickly. Again, I did the majors in detail in the last stream and I didn't get onto anything else. So I don't want to go into detail on much, but just to show some of the things that I was looking at before. But this is on others, kind of what I'm expecting. You're either looking for a bounce soon, nowish, which may then get up for a test into here, or we could get a drift further down. And just test back into this lower zone straight away. So hard to know. Here we had a very slow decline. Here we had more of a dramatic fall off a cliff scenario and just went through all the local demand. So it's kind of hard to judge. But you can start tentatively looking for longs. Then total E100, which, as I said, so I did follow up with TradingView on the removal of the history, and apparently that was intentional, and they at this point, as far as I'm aware, don't intend on bringing it back, which is really annoying. I do still have all my zones, so my chart looks distinctly odd, but at least I know where the zones are, so that's pretty nice. I'm not sure to be fair, I'm not sure why they removed the data. Hopefully it's not because it was inaccurate, in which case maybe that's not going to help me. Either way, this is was always more bearish than the others chart, as you know. And again, as I've drawn, that we had the possibility of a rising rising channel or a like bear flag type wedge. And this others chart, this total E100, this excluding the top 100, has ended up as being the latter, like the more bearish triangle that's being made. But again, doesn't mean it's not going to bounce here. We can still get that bounce. And the dominance charts, so let's start with BTC dominance. Again, quickly, we talked about this a lot before. In here could be a similar scenario to here and just keep running. You know, the difference is this is still in 6 months supply. Need to do that. Delete so we can actually see what we're doing. So we did have a hit here at 6 months supply off the top, which obviously this hadn't hit. I think this had hit 3 month at this point, but not the 6 month. So we had that hit of the 6 month. We moved higher. We moved higher. So at the moment, it's just in decision mode. You know, is this going to be a low? This has now made monthly supply. So are we going to come up here and then have more of a drop? Or is it going to do sort of similar to this and just end up keeping grinding like it has done previous or this time at the end of last year? So I guess we shall see. Ether dominance, like Ether BTC, again, I would have liked to touch higher. So we can just see what happens with this. Others dominance, as you know, I've always wanted a bit lower. So it's coming back into this demand and range that it had from June. But we can just see what the reaction is here. So I don't know. I mean, I guess there is hope here that alts could give another little move. But overall, you know, the chart is bearish and has been bearish. I opened the chart in the wrong part of the layout and it's put all these old zones back on. But like really, this is still in a downtrend, at least for this whole year. So yes, it might reverse, but at the moment, it's just coming back for that first test. So we'll see. My preference was for it to be lower. The only exception is TOTALDEFI. Actually, I didn't look at these. So the DeFi market cap chart here, while it's hit my zone of interest, and the difficulty I have is that now this has a long drop to support, longer than others, and the total E100, but it's showing additional strength over what the others chart looked like. It's come up, DeFi's come a lot higher. But does that mean, the problem is then if it retraces, what it means is if it retraces, it's got a lot further to go. Again, new monthly demand down here. It's got a lot further to go. So does that then mean that others, so either it could go one of two ways, either others breaks the channel because TOTALDEFI, we're going to have to wait for the confluence of TOTALDEFI to get to support, or potentially this bounces, you know, maybe it doesn't get all the way down there. Maybe it bounces on this interim level in here, for example. So I guess, again, we have to see, but this is obviously showing more strength, and then the TOTALDEFI dominance chart is showing similar. So at the moment, still hasn't broken support, and still a bit of space. So there's some things in here that make me think maybe we could get another move up. You know, maybe this can run up into the 2 month supply up here. Maybe others dominance is going to bounce here. Maybe others itself can bounce here. And then, you know, and this is assuming. So we're looking for, are we going to get a lower high? So we've kind of got a low time frame structure here, and is it going to continue? But at the moment, it hasn't broken. It's broken a daily demand up here, a weak daily demand, but this is the first strong daily demand. So it doesn't necessarily, you know, it could just continue an uptrend here. And as I said, this has the potential to go a little bit higher as well. So yeah, should leave those in. Yeah, anyway, those are the concerns and considerations that I've got going on with the market cap charts. So then very quickly on the majors, from a monthly perspective, just to hopefully hide things so we can see. So BCH already had a 3 month demand significantly lower and has actually closed above this level. It's got a 2-day at the monthly level here that it's closed above. So we'll just see what the bounce is like on that. TRX already had 2 monthly demand, I think, down there. We've got a new monthly demand on Litecoin and a new monthly, well, the monthly demand on Ripple we already had and has already been tested. So those are new monthly. So there is, again, some decent things going on in structure there. The problem, so what I had done is set a lot of alerts on the 3-day and 4-day supplies, and that's, in this case, in the case of the old majors, it's only on Litecoin that I've got that alert, and it just missed it. So I have pulled it down a bit now, but it had 3-day supply there already. It then subsequently confirmed to 4-day, but I was a bit late on setting it, so unfortunately missed that. I also set a slightly more aggressive alert on this 8-hour demand here, just in case we got an interim bounce, which the alert went off, but it hasn't actually quite hit the level. So from all of these that have the 3-4-day supply above, the challenge I have, and we'll see also on the same on the new majors, that quite a lot of them have a 12-hour supply up here that hasn't been tested. In the case of Litecoin, this did test, and that's why we've got the short re-entry after the original hit of the macro. It means that a week and a half ago. But the difficulty I have with the new majors, and which I'll show in a minute, is, they could come up and reject like that, or we could get, the first hit and then a push higher to the 12 hours that have been missed. And again, this is still in a bullish structure. We're still at demand, and we're still potential. That is still the possibility. So until we actually see this full demand break, this is basically still bullish. And it's just a retracement of that last move up. So still some things that we need to see a little bit more on. TRX, I did put an aggressive entry on. There was an 8-hour demand there yesterday. It was the only one created, and I thought, well, it was worth just in case we had another push up. And it's just holding in the 8-hour, but then it also made a 12-hour supply. So it's just holding in this tiny little range here. So we'll just see what happens on that. BCH just dropping, and Ripple just dropping. Ripple now on daily demand. I have set an alert for 2-day supply on Ripple, but it now also has a 4-day supply closer. But Ripple is likely to be volatile, and Ripple can stop hunt, so I'm just sticking with the fact it hasn't tested this all-time high breakout area yet. I'm not alerting aggressively on this supply here. The other challenge with a lot of the 3, 4, 5-day supplies is that they've been tested on different timeframes. So like I said, Litecoin didn't actually test, but Litecoin came very close when the 3-day was confirmed. Others you'll see they test on the 3-day, but then it makes a 4-day, or it turns that 3-day into a 4-day or 5-day, and then I'm kind of unsure about whether I should re-alert them or not. I really need to do some back testing on that and monitor a bit more. Let's check my Telegram quickly in case I'm getting any feedback. No. Right. So then moving on to the new majors. So again, decent. The majors are already starting to die even before Bitcoin came down yesterday, so that was quite apparent. BNB, I have this still more aggressive entry at the 12-hour demand there, just in case it sort of tries to flip a higher level, but we'll see. That's slightly more tenuous now. Just it's not that clean, but it does have a bit of a gap where it could take out some stops into this zone, so that's still worth watching. I did get a nice short on Link for that 12-hour retest up there. This also made this is in fact the only one that actually tested the 4-day supply, and ironically is the only one I didn't alert. Just that it was a little bit too close, whereas the others had closed significantly below, creating the supply. This was still just on a wick at that point in time, but ironically that was the one that fell. And Doggy has a 2-day, which is alerted. So Doggy is kind of a good example of what I was saying with the difficulty with the zone. So we've got a zone here, 2-day zone that hasn't been tested, and then also this 12-hour up the top. So if price is a week, maybe we'll just come straight down off there. But if we do at least some of these, are probably likely, to get a bounce and go up to the higher zone. And I also commented in the Telegram channel earlier that maybe we'd get something more like this kind of pattern. And I was hoping for that yesterday, really, when we were up here. I kind of thought maybe we'll get this. So I don't know. We'll have to see. Now we've come down into demand first. So DOGE is about to hit 4 or 5 day demand down there. It also has a monthly. So at the moment, these new monthly zones I haven't updated on any of the charts yet. I haven't updated alerts, so I just need to think about them a bit. So there is a monthly level on DOGE just there. There is an ADA. ADA also has a monthly level. It's also just below that consolidation from the 11th of July. Or was it 11th of June? No, 11th of July. BNB already had a monthly, which it tested and came off much lower. Or in fact, maybe it's got a new monthly. No, sorry, BNB does have a new monthly. We had that test on the 3 month at the base. So it does have a new monthly demand. So all of these, and even Link has a new monthly. But Link is a challenging one because it's in 6 month supply. So that's why it kind of looks very brown at the moment. I should probably delete the 6 months. The 6 months is a giant zone at the top. So now it's made this new monthly demand. So again, I was more bearish on this because of the 6 month supply, but is it going to get a bounce here, and is it going to be of any strength? I don't know. But now it's made the monthly, I'm more inclined to think about looking for longs on this. And yeah, BNB already had that monthly alerted. So yeah, so all of the majors, basically it's up to you if you choose to short 3 or 4 day supplies up here, or if you wait, if they're wick, just be careful if you do, because they could go up to the 12 hours that are a bit higher. And I think most of the majors look like that. A couple of the ones that don't are the ones that are more aggressive, that have been more aggressive, like BNB, BCH, TRX. And then finally, the new majors B, DOT, Solana, NEAR, and Atom. So Atom's come down into weekly. Atom and DOT, in fact, neither of those confirmed monthly demand. Both of them could have made it, but didn't. And both of those also are in that lower high triangle type pattern rather than the upward channel like the others are. And in fact, so is NEAR. And none of those three made monthly demand. NEAR I treat a bit separately because I was more bullish on that because it came off 3 months demand at the lows, whereas DOT has only hit a 3 day, and Atom still really hasn't hit where I wanted it to hit. So Atom I haven't put a long entry in. It's in this weekly demand now. I'm kind of feeling glad I didn't put a long entry in. DOT I did. The only thing with DOT is that DOT potentially could have been a swing fail of previous lows there, and therefore now is retesting the start of the impulse. So DOT, the alert has gone for weekly demand here, so you can keep an eye on that. NEAR is just sort of floating, and SOL has hit a daily level. But so you can see with all of these that the confidence isn't quite there for longs. So yes, we might get some small moves up, but generally, and the reason I look at all of these is because I want the confluence of all of them being kind of at support at the same time. And the ones that get there first might get a small bounce and then go deeper inside. They don't tend to break them. But if there's something like NEAR, for example, you can see clearly kind of isn't anywhere, that normally means the market as a whole isn't ready to reverse. So that's kind of what I'm thinking at the moment. And then, yeah, and on the short side, the same applies on, I think, all of these. Solana is the only one, again, I haven't put a short entry on, mainly because it left some equal highs up here. But it does have 2 day supply in there. And NEAR, I also didn't put an alert for a short entry on this 4 day supply, mainly, again, because I was more bullish on this. However, Atom and DOT, I have alerted the 4 day supplies above, and then they have the same structure that I've just talked about with the 12-hour untested above that. So we just need to see how strong the move up is, if we get one at all. Anyway, so that's, I've still managed to do 45 minutes. I've included alts in that. So onto the alerts. I'll look at the previous layouts, so the 2 layouts that I've talked about and had previously. I do want to get rid of now. Like they would serve their purpose. I said I've seen many streams ago that I was going to get rid of, but I haven't ended up doing that because there's always seems to be some 1 or 2 on them that I want to watch. But if anything, I'd rather just make a whole new layout and keep the ones that I want. Anyway, Bob I had because it was being aggressive when nothing else was. I think when's that, like at the start of July. but really has just kind of died off, and is, while it's holding zones that I've had alerted, it's not really doing much. XO was, similar to Bob. I kind of was being aggressive when other things weren't, but then it's just done this rift of death since then. I did have an alert go for a trend line break on this, but I said to the group that it was just going to go straight into supply, and it's kind of hard to know if I wanted this to take out all the trend line stops, but really I would have liked this to come down into demand first. So I said just keep an eye on it in case it makes some demand in here or some consolidation that gives you something to long off. But again, it's not something that I really care about particularly. All the same, all I wanted, I was watching because it had this big monthly demand and it had done this big move off it there. But again, has, held for a bit of a bounce here and then failed on the last to try and get a move up, and now is just dropping deeper. So again, I don't care about this really until it gets down to there now, and it might run from here, but again, no need for it to be on my radar over and above anything else. BAN is the only one in here that I still quite like. So I was hoping it would break out at this point, but no, it came back down. But this is also on 2 monthly demand. So and was still pushing even when a lot of stuff was falling, and it has kind of joined the pack since yesterday. But this has a lot of scope if it does break out. But it's a challenging one. I've seen these can go both ways. As you know, I've had things that I've been following that I've kind of thought, this is looking good, it's consolidating, it's holding, and then suddenly they just fall off a cliff. So it makes me nervous, but and I still want to see a bit more from this, and I'm going to maybe just actually see a proper move up that gives a close and gives a demand to trade off. But that's still on the radar. LAUNCHCOIN was on the radar, but so it was on the radar here because I thought potentially it could give a move if it held there, but then it didn't. And then it flipped to weekly supply, which I talked about in the previous streams. I alerted it, rejected it, and it's just and this potentially is a very nice short. So I'd still say keep an eye on that for possible short entries because it's got a long drop, like many things. AIOT was the best performer in this group. So we had longs at the lows, we had longs re-entry, a bit of an early re-entry, and then later re-entries, and then some really decent move up. Dropped down into this demand, which unfortunately I've been alerted a bit more conservatively, and it hasn't quite hit. I was hoping we'd get a swing fail at the high or something. But yeah, again, that doesn't need to be on the radar anymore particularly. And then finally, B and TAG were kind of two new ones I'd added because again, they looked strong, but similar to Bob, they kind of looked strong and then haven't really done much since. B, I did put an alert because it made a 4-day supply and it's kind of slowly thinking about things there. TAG, I'm potentially still bullish on. I didn't have alert for daily demand there yesterday. I think that's a daily or a 2-day. Might be a 2-day now. I know it's 5-day in fact. So there's actually a 4-day. Yeah, there's actually a 4-day demand there. So I still want to be bullish on TAG, but it's taking its sweet time. Yeah, but this potentially I think could do. I was hoping that like this and maybe even B would do those slow grinds like we saw on Useless and some of the other ones on Bananas 31 and those slow grinds up. But again, they're just being a bit slow. But so while these are okay, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not necessarily. They don't need to be on my radar anymore. Then on the other layout, the only one I'm really still interested in this is from a long perspective, actually, is form. So again, potentially all the others I can get rid of, but I'll show form quickly. Well, I'll show you all of them, but form got a long off the low here, then a short, then unfortunately it came back and took out that low, so I don't know if people would have got stopped out on that and then took off. But I have said to the group, watch it if it holds this 12-hour demand or 8-hour demand. I think it might be 12 in there now as well. Yeah, it's 12. But yeah, watch this for potential continuation. Still holding, it's at least easy invalidation. If it does drop, I'd look for longs in there, but this can also potentially can get scalp longs on this from current price. And then let me think about the rest. Okay, so hype. Hype I'm in fact going to come back to. So somebody was asking me about this a couple of days ago, and I said, you know, it's got weekly demand, 2 weekly demand, and I had this alerted, this 5-day inside here. But I did say this has reminded me slightly worryingly of FARTCOIN top and the PopCat top, and this seems to be like a more common top kind of pattern that we're seeing. So I said I wanted to have a look at that, and I did open FARTCOIN on the other layout, so we'll have a look at that in a moment. Syrup. And Syrup basically, I should say the same, Syrup is exhibiting that exact same pattern. So again, reminds me of the FARTCOIN top, and this did take a wick up through everything, and unfortunately didn't come back for my short re-entry up here. It's now back down in weekly demand, which I did have alerted, but obviously it's struggling a little bit here. But I'll show the FARTCOIN pattern, and then we'll have a think about that in a minute. ZBCN has been lovely. So long off there, you know, it was short biased because it had weekly supply, but conscious that we had trend line stops. Flipped to, you know, when it broke, didn't do much off this one. I then flipped to a long alert on the bottom there, and then a short alert off the top here. So now it's been a pleasure to trade, should I say. I do have an alert there on that daily. It's also got a monthly down here, or 2 monthly if it does want to drop a lot. You know, now it might have made a top. This might just be a lower high, in which case maybe this will fail. So I need to have a little think about that. But it's been nice to trade, but again, doesn't need to be on the layout really anymore. HOSICO the same, you know, it was bullish at the time. Got some really nice short entries off it, because my intent when something's very bullish is to look for, you know, trying to trade it back down again on the correction, as well as, you know, potentially for continuation. But so then it went through the first alert to get a bit of bounce up there, but I think it just bounced into low time frame supply, and now it's hit the next alert. But again, there's no reason to have this still on the radar. It may or may not go up. TUT has been like hell. And again, I've now put yet another aggressive short entry in on here, so let's see if we get a test on that. But this, you know, really for ages I thought, okay, this is going to drop, but no. And then obviously didn't come back for the retest entry up there. But it, you know, this again could be a very decent short all the way down to this monthly demand. So you can keep that on your radar for a short if it gets gives you a little test inside. I put in the alert that, you know, just in case it's a bit of an arse, then maybe it'll go up to this 4 hour up here. So that's something to keep an eye on too. So that I still would like on the radar for a decent short, but doesn't have to be. Eustace again, actually similar to that FARTCOIN top again. Although it's a bit lower time frame here. As you know, I've been kind of short biased on this, at least, well, not short biased, I've been long biased, but I've been trying to get into a short because I think it could make a big move down if it wants to. Because obviously it's got, this has come up a long way, and is so sort of showing signs of rolling over, and some of the ones that have rolled over, and one of the reasons I had these new layouts to start with was to try and see if we were going to get like the big red candles down, which we've seen on quite a few of them. Bananas 31, for example, layer on like those ones which did these grinds when the whole market was going sideways, and these were particularly strong for no apparent reason. So again, I put in a more aggressive alert for a short on 1 day supply there, which it seems to have just slightly front run me. And then obviously it's got a 12-hour above it. So hopefully this is now potentially ready to roll over. It's also got a 4-day supply in here, I think. So not the best one, but it might have front run me for that daily. But yeah, keep an eye on that for a short entry if that does run up a little bit higher. And then finally cross. And cross in the moment, again, I want to still be bullish on this. It's a little bit like B and the tag that I just showed. Again, it's been up. It's got a 5-day demand in here. It's not the cleanest, nicest 5-day. It's a weak 5-day, and it's not a good structure. So if it closes back below here, then you can look for a short back into the 5-day. Else, I'm still bullish until proven otherwise. And look, yeah, it did make a 2-day supply in there, so it's become a little bit tenuous, but something that's worth keeping an eye on, but again, something that doesn't need to specifically be on my radar, I don't think, or maybe if it breaks up a bit. But I get, what I'll see is if it does break up, then I'll get that 4-hour alert will go, and then if it's made demand by then I can look for long re-entries. And I think is that all of them on here? Oh yeah, okay, so that's pretty much it, but except for the FARTCOIN thing. So I did pull this up to show. So incidentally, for those people who trade FARTCOIN, FARTCOIN has made a monthly supply in there, still holding 2 monthly demand. It's a giant zone. And it's a challenging structure. So what we have on FARTCOIN is this is overarching as a weekly from over here. It's just not colored in at the moment, but from that black line upwards is a weekly supply. So the whole thing is in a weekly supply and is at a lower high. It does look like a distribution pattern. If you look at Ether BTC, it's exactly how that looks. It looks the same as Sol BTC, so a lot more the BTC pairs than the US dollar pairs, but that's the concern here. I was looking for shorts as we came back up into this area. Obviously, it's held longer, and then it did make this 2 months demand. I don't think I didn't alert it. I don't think I talked about it. That really had a significant move off that level, though. A little bit stronger there, but then came right back down. The difficulty now is it's made this monthly supply, which is this brown zone here. I've got an alert at this daily inside it. But yeah, like I say, it's still holding the 2 monthly demand, but whether it's going to come back deeper inside, it's a question now as to whether structure trumps supply and demand. And for me, structure would normally win, however, because that is what makes strong and weak. Alarm off. So structure normally wins because that was what makes a strong or weak demand. So like this demand back down here is weak. Sorry, is strong weekly, a strong weekly demand. So when it comes back there, it gets bounced off it. If that has been unable then to make a new high, so at the moment it hasn't managed to make a new high. So therefore, when we come back to here, this is a weekly or monthly demand, and this is a weekly demand above it. That doesn't mean we're not going to bounce, but it's just being aware of that. And we can still bounce here and make that higher high, and then later that becomes strong. So, but really structure trumps everything. So if this is unable to make a higher high here, then really I expect this low to be taken out. Now that's very bearish, but with the 2 month demand in there, I'd probably say that's less likely. If we didn't have the 2 month, then I'd be trading for that. But now at least it's made a monthly supply, and that's more recent and it's smaller. So what that's basically saying is a whole bunch of people went long in here who are now trapped. So if we come back into that area, potentially we get a push down from it. So be a bit conscious of that on the FARTCOIN chart. But anyway, what I really wanted to say is, can you see the similarity here with, for example, Hype and Syrup, although actually Syrup maybe a little bit. But yeah, that they've got to run up, then they've got these 3 pushes to the high, and then in this case has one final push before it dies. So let's look at Hype. Unfortunately, it's not going to be necessarily as clear cut as that. But you can see we've got that run up and then 3 pushes to the high. Whether we get that final move, I don't know. Syrup, in fact, probably did get that final move. So Syrup, you can see that similarity. So this is just something to watch out for when you're looking at things are potentially topping off. That's basically so it didn't come up as high as FARTCOIN did, but has come up and taken out that high. So if Hype followed exactly the same pattern, then maybe we get a bounce here that gives us another run up. But I think it's also just being conscious of what supply and what demand's been put in. So in this case, I'd like to still be bullish on this for now. We are still in weekly to weekly demand. I mean, it's obviously looking pretty dismal at the moment. It's coming down deep into that 5-day zone. But it has got zones up here. All these zones have been tested. There might be a new 3-day there. Yeah, at this stage, I don't know how comfortable I'd be shorting in here, but that would be a possibility. But I need to have a think about structure. But this is just something to be aware of anyway, whether or not we get that last push on this. Just watch out for this on all. So we get this strong move up, comes and finds some sort of demand here. See, and quite often I find that it's when it hasn't actually hit a proper demand at the low. So in this case, it's just kind of dropped down into the middle of the green. and maybe picked up some demand over there, and then has run again. And then it's got a weaker move, but still reasonably strong, makes a higher high, comes back at a higher low, and again a weaker move, still strong. The last run is still strong, but the weakness on those moves compared to this original move is apparent. And so, and what's apparent also is that they're not making significant new highs. So here we've got to move up, consolidate, move up. It's made a high, and this, at this stage is still strong, but and again has broken the high again. But they're not very high moves. So it's this sort of 3 hits to the high. It's the rising wedge or whatever you want to call it. And then what we are seeing, like on FARTCOIN, and the FARTCOIN, bear in mind that when I spotted that pattern on FARTCOIN, it's because I was comparing it to POPCAT, which I actually like to look at now as well. Then it has this last hurrah kind of push, and then dies, was what happened on FARTCOIN anyway. But I feel like I'm seeing this more and more when you start to just get that pattern recognition, because you've looked at 8 million charts. So anyway. Yeah, and then obviously you can see how that played out eventually on FARTCOIN. FARTCOIN's a little bit cleaner, but if I look at, go and have a look at POPCAT. And in fact, yeah, so what I originally noted on POPCAT was it was much different time frame to FARTCOIN, and this is a little bit different. I kind of had this sort of last hurrah move, but it was also what I've actually been noticing was a much smaller version of it. And as you know, like TA fractals charts just repeat patterns on different time frames. So again, had that big run here, 3 pushes to the high, tried to die, and then got this kind of blow off top before it died much more significantly. I'm sorry, I'm showing you on the log chart, so it actually doesn't look that bad. But if you look on the linear chart, you can see really how much that did die and how much that blow off top is. So it's very different. Does FARTCOIN look like that on I think it does look like that on the linear chart, but it doesn't mean you can't trade it, and it certainly doesn't mean you can't trade that last blow off top, but it's just being aware that this is what it's putting in, and then looking for those short entries. Once you've taken out that high, is it going to give you a structure for a short? So let's just go down to the lower time frame. So you can see this was in fact when I first spotted the pattern on FARTCOIN was what I was thinking on this. I was just thinking it looks familiar, and I remember saying this looks like POPCAT. But again, we had that last move up, some small grinds to the top, tried to break down a blow off top before it actually distributes through. So I don't know if this is one of those, I guess it's a little bit like a Wyckoff distribution pattern, but I think Wyckoff would just come down from here, but not really have this big push. But that I find is a very common pattern in crypto to keep an eye on. POPCAT's like trading nice as well. It's always nice when I look back. Some of them are horrendous and some look great, but it's always nice when you look back at a chart, particularly when I just put very select. Some of them have been trading much more aggressively or alerting much more aggressively if they're on my radar, like the different layouts that you saw a minute ago. Something like this, which I haven't been looking at aggressive trades, it's just really nice to see that you've got the low, you've got the high, you've got the low, you've got the high. And that really is, and that's why I try and say, trading can be easy if you're not forcing trades. And for part of that reason is why I haven't been wanting to alert Bitcoin so much recently, because once it starts getting, you have the initial move into a new range, up or down, and it does some moves of supply and demand. Once it becomes very, very sideways and choppy and stop hunting all over the place, then obviously zones aren't working anywhere near as well. So yeah. Let me just check. Nobody's saying anything to me. Ether didn't hold, so that means anything's, I guess, all coming down. Okay, so Ether's down at the bottom of the box now. That's nicer for the 61 fib, actually. 61 fib is perfectly on that daily level now if this is the low. But obviously that's hypothesizing at this stage. Bitcoin dropping again. Now, looking like it will create 4-hour supply. Let me just see if the CME has hit the actual level yet. No, still a little bit lower on the CME gap close. Yeah, anyway, that was a pretty neat idea to say short the green area because it probably wouldn't go back up. I mean, it needs the longs and it needs spot buying for it to go back up. Anyway, do not want to digress back into Bitcoin and Ether. It's just a little bit of an update. So onto the alerts. So the recent alerts I've had trillions through July, obviously, and a lot of them I've repeated. And now I really need to. So on alts, let's just talk about how to trade them. So I did say in the last stream, and I'll reiterate here, what I've been doing is I go into, and obviously now the market's changed a little bit in the last few days, so I'd like to just disclaimer that quickly in that maybe this will change. But for the moment, what I've been doing, given I have 700 odd alts on this list, is I sort by percentage change. I try and do it close to the end of the day. And then we could obviously then see bigger changes in either direction. I look at what is up massively. And I look at, so in the case of this example, GORILLABSC has come up into 5-day supply. And in fact, I did have an alert go on that. And that was a previously set alert. I look at what the structure's done, obviously, since I've been looking at it. And this, obviously, I've had long entries off the bottom here, so that's been really nice. Short in there, it's come back retested, and then just run up. And I look at whether I can short it back down. And the reason I'm doing that is so you can see here, and this is no different, even despite the drop today, this is no different to any other day. You can see here that I've got, 10% here, from 10% to 71% on GORILLABSC. It was what, I don't know, 15 up movers in this top section above 10%. And normally I would like to prefer actually higher than 10%, so 15 or 20%. And then you're looking at really, you've got an 8 to 10 top movers or top gainers. And what I then do is just go and look at all their charts, find what's at all-time high and what's in supply. And then I alert them then. So for example, on this, if this was low, I would look that, I would alert this, given this is running through a little bit here, maybe I'd look at those trend line stops there and put an alert at a daily supply. That might be what I would do, if something's like running already like this. Study the structure, think if, it's going to continue, but the chances are that this is just going to go back down again. And it does depend on the chart, and I can't say that definitively. So anyway, if you're trading now, you can watch this to see if it does go back down again. If something has come up in an hourly, 2-hour, and a 4-hour or less candle, then I look for aggressive entries to potentially short it all the way back down again. If it's coming into a zone, or if the move is not as quick, like if it's been over the course of the day, like if this kept going for the next day, 2 days, 3 days, and this is not as strong a move, as strong a move. If it's more like this, then I'd be less inclined to think I can just short it straight back down. Then I might look for long entries. But I mean, really, you've got to just determine, are they in supply? So for example, like here, something look more like this, where it's come up, made support, decent moves up, and it's coming up in the top gainers because of these big candles, then I'd be more inclined to look for long entries, depending on whether it's in supply, because then you can get some scalps through into longs before it eventually reverses. And then you start looking for shorts later. If it's come up very quickly like this, and I think GODS is a very good example of that, so I will have a look at that chart in a minute, then the chances of it coming back down equally fast are pretty high. So then I would look at 30-minute, 15-minute charts, look at, where's the new demand, has it made any new 30-minute or 15-minute supply, and look for just an aggressive short entry to take it back down again. So I do that with the top end of the list. Then at the bottom end of the list is basically the same in reverse. Let me see if GODS is appearing there. And I think GODS did most of its drop yesterday. It's close to that, actually. I'll show GODS since we're there. So this is a great example of it. This, again, this actually hit my alert for monthly supply, but it has 6 months and it's taken a big wick. So be careful. Like, obviously, depending on the chart, something like this, obviously, it's not surprising. It's wicked up inside it. And this is an hourly chart. So But again, you're looking at, so it made a 30-minute supply in there. So you can see, you could have got an aggressive entry just on the immediate test there and just traded it down to here to this weekly. And then it's also done a bigger retest there. But these are sort of fairly high probability trades to get down. So then what I'm doing at the bottom end of the list, something like this, for example, if it's come down a lot in one day, I'm going, obviously, where's demand? Where is it coming into? Is this something I want to long? If it's done that, it's probably not something I want to long. I think Hold might have done similar. Yeah, so Hold's again in a downtrend. It's done a decent move up, but it's come back into 2-day demand. You can look for longs and that if you want. Obviously now, since the whole market's dropping, this isn't ideal. But again, big loser, is it going to at least give you a bounce to scalp a little bit higher? It's a bit dark. So something like this is a little bit different. Obviously, again, the whole market's dropping. So if this was just a late dropper, but again, like if you are bullish on this, if you think like this has just come up into the same supply, so it's really just at the top of the range. So this isn't something I would want to long like right now. NCM might be, yeah, that's the old Colonials chart. The other collection that I like to look at are things like this. So anything that's newly listed, I would say newly listed anywhere, but mostly newly listed just MEXC is the higher probability. So in this case, it is just on MEXC. Newly listed on futures are very high probability for shorts. So what I tend to do is, again, if I see, I do this with new coins anyway. This is not necessarily just because they're dropping. So, but if any new coins come up on this list, even if they have like a big move up, then I'm looking for where can I get a short entry. In this case, sometimes you have to trail them down. They just go off without you. So obviously this has made a daily supply right at current price and just rejected off it. So, it may not come back up there, and maybe I'm just wasting an alert by having it so far away from price now. But these new listings on MEXC, and I think, like I say, all exchanges, but I think when they're in the other exchanges, they're a bit more 50-50 because they've got more people looking at them, more market makers and things like that. Let's get some more of these. Still nice short in there. Anyway, yeah, so that's bottom end of the list and top end of the list. So rather than trying to, again, chart every coin, and rather than trying to be, so you either stick with, the 10 or 20 coins that you look at, where people are looking at SUI, at FARTCOIN, at Ondo, with the normal set that people like to trade. Or if you're more, but that I think is more if you're an investor, because otherwise you're going to sit in those coins and they're just going to be going sideways for indefinite periods of time until the market's ready for everything to go up together. If you want to actually be a more active trader, then I would suggest you look at, either you're in my channel and you're getting the alerts, so so for those who don't follow me, let me just show you this quickly. This is my Alt TA channel for the premium group. So like every day I'm getting alerts like this coming in. I'm putting comments myself as the things that might be worth looking at. I do throw some random, obviously there's heaps of alerts that have come in. Like you can see that I put comments, as I've said earlier, form is still holding, but it's yawn, it's boring, and cross is worth watching. And then I said, don't forget ban, so I put the comments of things that I want to look at. Esports is of interest, like if something like this, I'll show you esports actually. But yeah, so if you're in my group, then you can just pick things that are actually hitting supply and demand at particular times because you'll get my alerts. So this is one of the rare occurrences this coin esports is actually on Bybit Binance. It's not just a MEXC coin. So this is an example of something that's gone up. So the ones that are MEXC only are more likely to just drop like a stone. But so yeah, something like this again, I had just watching this hit and miss. It's not necessarily high probability. I put an alert here for 12-hour demand, and it's got a really nice move off there. And I put an alert here for a retest if it comes back. So that's on a nice run. See what Edge is doing. Oh, that's a very nice. I've looked at that. That's a pretty nice chart. So, okay, so more generically on alts then, before I start going through the alerts, like what you need to be doing now is looking at all the monthly closes. So this has obviously made a new monthly demand. So if you have any alerts like I do, then I start kind of moving them up. Doesn't mean, it could still come back down to that weekly inside there, but I like to know when things hit monthly demand. So move some of these alerts up. But then if something like this, which is strong, maybe it won't come back down there. So I need to chart this and just see if it's going to hold this breakout here, because that's pretty nice. So hopefully it's not going to do something like this and just come back down. But if it does, that's the entry. It'll be either of those two, that weekly or inside the monthly or the monthly. Yeah, so firstly, you need to be checking all your monthly zones. That's the main thing you should be doing today. And they could be in either direction. So some things have monthly demand, some things have monthly supply. Okay, so let's move on to the alerts list. I can just skim back up through some of them. So I do split my list so that now just people I share my watch list in my group as well, so anybody can see, rather than just having to go all the alerts that have come into the channel. I have to go through all of them. I share the watch list because also when I add them to the watch list, I select, at least from now on, like not some of the older ones I don't, but I generally don't use the perps chart. I tend to select the one with the most history. And from all the exchanges, with some exceptions, because I don't love using Gate and KSEX and those kinds of exchanges, but I like to have as much history as possible. So all of these things that happen, so I have run through these lists. So this first section, things that hit at the start of July were less reliable, and in fact this one kind of was pretty much held, but it's obviously took a big wick. But obviously they hit at the start of the July, which was the kind of the beginning of that. The first week or two of July was at the beginning of the up move. So the things that hit there, for most of the part, went higher in supply. I'm picking bad examples now. I'm trying to pick an example that actually did go higher in supply. So in fact, well, actually APE has actually in fact held the weekly supply. So this, for example, hit the weekly supply just right at the start of July. So, and what I've found with some of those that hit supply at the start of the month, is that they've just kept going because they were just too early compared to what the rest of the market was doing, and or maybe the structure was slightly different. And the structure here is that APE is actually a 3-month supply, so it's actually held. I obviously didn't get a very big move off the weekly initially, and it's taken multiple weeks to get back up there, but obviously is now still holding that bigger structure. See if it's created monthly supply and monthly demand now. So again, what I was hoping, you can see like that, so that brown level that I just had there, I was hoping for a close over there, and then that would create monthly demand, and then maybe we'd move higher into a higher supply. But in this case, no, it hasn't. In this case, it didn't even push higher, in fact, and is now coming back down. So again, while everybody's bullish and on the market, and there are coins to be bullish on, that's fine. But do be aware that a lot of these coins with history, and I said this here, and I'm saying it again here, like here, maybe we're going to get another move, but we'll see. But do not forget that these things are in downtrends. So there is no reason, and in fact, this move is higher probability than this move. But everybody likes to hold all season at every given opportunity. I mean, I'm like, yes, this is still a sort of an alt season. So we might still get a bigger move. Something like APE here, like I would have expected, given we've had those weeks of bullishness in July. If this was going to be bullish, I would have expected it to be up there already, quite frankly. So this is obviously not the best example. Date maybe went higher. Try and give an example of something that actually did break. Okay, here's an example of something. So this didn't break. So what I had on a lot of these is, this is a monthly supply. It was in a 6-monthly supply. So again, like those high time frames, it was a week 6-monthly supply. I hadn't really closed much below. And now this has actually flipped to monthly demand. But so this thing was this BNT. So now it's made a new monthly demand. But so what happened, obviously we got the run up, we hit the alert for monthly supply and 6-monthly supply here. but then because it was hit early in the month, it had a drift back down. In fact, this hit in May, so this is what over here. These would have been the hits in July. So it could have made a lower high here, but because the market was bullish, what it's ended up doing is going higher into the 6-month supply. In this case, I didn't have an alert set up for up here. I was thinking maybe that could go higher. And all of these, you've got to look at the bigger picture and the bigger range. So, this is still in a kind of local range. Is this still bullish? Like, and I don't really want to do full analysis on all these because they need thinking about it each time the alerts go. But I just wanted to give an example here of when alerts will sometimes get run through. But if you put them in, again, just to highlight, if you put them in decent places, so here and here, they're still at decent supply levels, they're still giving you a bit of a reaction. This is a 2-day chart, so, it at least gives you time to kind of reconsider, to get an entry, and then kind of go, actually, maybe this entry isn't working, we're building up too much demand, and then either flip your entry, or just get out or put your stop at break even or something. So if you're wrong, but the problem is once you start FOMOing in and, buying here just because you see a green candle, that's when it all goes horribly wrong. Anyway, so the ones later in the month obviously have been better. The other problem I've had, really already looked at, the other problem I've had is, because of the ranges, supply and demand have mostly been weak. And then the higher time frame zones have been massive. So the other problem with things that hit early in the month is where they hit 1 month, 6 month supply, etc. They were huge zones, not much like we saw on Link. It's a huge zone, and it doesn't have to reject off the level. Like, I put the alert on the level, and it may or may not get an initial reaction, but then it depends what demand's been made since then. Is it going to bounce on demand and then go higher inside the zone? But anyway, I'll go through the alerts from today so we can see. So GORILLABSC we already talked about. KORI, what this is this a MEXC? It's a MEXC shitcoin. So this, I've just had an alert for 4-day supply here. So still a bit tentative. This is actually one of the sort of stronger ones, but see what reaction we get here. It's still holding that daily demand. Then I've had, obviously, so the vast majority at the bottom of this list are things that have just dumped down into demand today. And I haven't had a chance to look at them. Some of them would have been set a while ago. So I imagine the ones that went earlier yesterday have probably been broken or at least gone deeper inside the zones. And I really need, like, now we're at the point, we've had quite a lot of movement over the last 2 months, and I'm well behind on the kind of overall chart. So I really need to run back through the entire chart list to see, like those monthly zones. So I've got the monthly in there, that it might have created monthly demand there, but in this case it hasn't. It's closed back below. So it's really just in a tight sideways range. And in fact, it's in a monthly supply. Yeah, so this is within a week monthly supply. So we're just in this sort of sideways range on this coin. So it's not necessarily the highest probability long in here. Obviously, it was a daily demand. So I've thrown in a whole bunch of different, it's a 2-day demand. I've thrown in a whole bunch of different alerts because I wanted some more aggressive and some less aggressive. But obviously, you don't want to, if things are just going to keep running, you don't want to miss them. So a bunch of these aren't really ones that I particularly want to trade given the current state of affairs. So T is one of those. PIVX is another one. So PIVX is just like quite a messy chart. Like I was watching this and I didn't put in a short entry up here, but I was kind of like in 2 minds about it. But again, still in a big monthly supply. Has it bottomed out? Possibly. It's hit a low, but it's coming off an annual supply. And that's my problem on a lot of these charts, is they're a very high time frame supply. And then there's these massive zones, huge monthly zone there and a huge 2 monthly zone there, and it can be quite hard to judge, whether they are going all the way up. Sort of in this 6 month zone up here, so this had a nice tap on the 6 month level. So really watch those levels, the monthly levels and things like that. And yeah, so moving on, TROLLSOL. Did I talk about this already? I can't remember now. TROLLSOL, again, is one of the charts that I'm kind of liking. This has made a monthly demand here. Got an aggressive entry there, and I had an aggressive entry that went today or last night on this. Again, worth watching that monthly level if it comes back to there. but this has been quite nice trading both directions again and now has broken out. So I'm still kind of liking this chart unless the whole market's going to come crashing down in flames. TAP is another one I said to the group to watch. This is very much in a downtrend, but also a new coin. At some point, so let's say this is MEXC only now. So again, this is on a bunch of the exchanges and not just MEXC. So again, gives it more validity and maybe going up. I put an alert just aggressively on this 12-hour demand. It's very early. There's a high risk. I put a lot of these alerts at very high risk entries. If it gets a move from here, great. It's got a nice tight stop on this, but this could still very much fall. AAVE is one I like. So this hit alert for 3-week demand, although it actually hasn't quite hit the level. So this potentially could go a little bit lower in here, although, but this is something to keep an eye on. I was trying to kind of assess this earlier. So I'm bullish on this, the DeFi chart is very nice. My TUT alert hitting now. The DeFi chart is very nice. I'm very bullish on this because we're in this annual demand. I'm bullish again, at the bottom we hit this 3-month demand. We've got a nice re-entry, and then I've got a re-entry here. Obviously now it's stalling out at monthly supply and at this lower high point. And not dissimilar to Ether, it's like, are these things now just going to crash back down? Are they making just enormous ranges and are going to retest? So we get the two options. Is this going to be, does this become a triangle kind of pattern, where we kind of move back down here? Or does it become a zigzag correction, move all the way back down here? Or, is that just too early, given we're still holding demand in here? And that's why I had these more aggressive alerts. It's too early to really say that because this could still just run. So that's something that's worth considering. But yeah, you can keep an eye on that because if this does hold, again, it could be quite good. Maybe look also at, I don't know, any of the other DeFi coins, but XMR, is another one that was super strong and I haven't looked at for a while. Cookie. Again, just coming into a daily zone, it just missed there, and obviously I've had this alert set for a while. You just keep an eye and see if that's going to give a bounce there. This did have a 3-month, or it does have a 3-month demand in there, so this is something that I would be more bullish on overall. It came down inside it and moved up. Didn't get very high, to be fair. It didn't come down. Crypto likes to come down quite deep in these demands, and unfortunately there's a long way to go if it's going to come all the way down to the bottom there. But yeah, keep an eye on this in this area and on that 3-month retest there and see if this gives anything. Else the 3-day retest down here. Quite a nice clean chart though, so it might give some nice swings on this at least. But and I can see there's also another daily level, 3-day level actually at that 3-month retest level. So this is something I think that's worth keeping an eye on. It's quite a nice clean chart. TAI, something I wouldn't trade now. So this is probably an alert I've had it there for a while. It's wicked very close to it, very close to it. It's now coming off 2-month supply, 3-month supply. Up to you if you want to trade it. This could, I mean, the only in its favor, it could run through all these stops, but it's not a particularly high probability zone now with these 2 wicks very close to it. SHIB. Please note on actually all these examples that I'm giving as well, like most of them as yet, I haven't looked at what the monthlies are looking like. So just be conscious that, again, you need to check yourself, if there's already monthly supplies. If the monthlies are flipped to demands, etc., etc. So SHIB is another one, it did come up high inside the monthly supply, but is still inside a monthly supply. It didn't flip it to demand. It's now coming back to test this weekly level. SHIB I kind of like overall because we're on this monthly at the low as well. But again, the bigger picture just makes it very challenging when I think about this. We had this big move up, we retraced the entire thing. We had another move up, but the move up didn't break the high. So therefore this demand is not strong. So strictly, I think we should take out that low before, if it gets that bigger bounce. But that doesn't mean we're not going to get, decent tradable moves up here or up here. In the interim, as you can see here, you're still getting decent sized moves. Maybe we're going to consolidate through here and it's going to continue. So the bigger structures in many cases are just giant ranges. So yeah, then you've got to consider the local structure. So like similar here, you know, this is actually a good example of some of the things that I've been talking about previously. So, you know, big move up, retraces, unable to break high, make a higher high, so comes down, takes out this low. So these entries here that I would have had, you know, potentially trying to at least, so sometimes you'll get a bounce up to here. So I don't take back those entries when they look bad. Obviously it didn't work, but it is possible it made a higher low here and then make the triangle. So that's always the challenge, is are you going to get the triangle or are you going to get the zigzag? And in this case, we got the zigzag. And similar here on the lower time frame now. Move all those drawings. Obviously we've made a lower high there. We've actually got a smaller zigzag or diamond pattern even coming down. So maybe this is going to make a diamond. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's made a low. Taken out the lows here. I mean, having looked at that bigger pattern, that's kind of decent, but I don't know. See if we get a bit more of a move off this. Coming out of monthly supply makes it pretty hard to be bullish though, and also 3 months. So we had the test of the 3 month supply, and it made a monthly. It's tested into that, so I'd actually probably like to drop a little bit lower on this now. Something you can keep an eye on coming into demand. Audio, this is low probability long entry, but demand, but obviously clearly very much in a downtrend. Does have some stops. So a lot of these runs that we had in the last month anyway also took these stops. So the ones like this which haven't, maybe they'll come, maybe they're laggers, or maybe they're just going to die. SAGA, similar scenario here. So again, like could have created a monthly demand but didn't. Stayed in the monthly supply, possibly makes a higher low, but there's nothing that really tells you this is actually not dissimilar to the SHIB pattern. So this is the sort of weaker end. This is not a strong demand. Bid was one I kind of told the group to watch, so it is a stronger one. It has made a monthly demand here, like that. It's coming into 3 week and 1 month demand here, so I do think this is worth having on your radar for possible long entries. And I'm tentative on whether I should still have a short on that supply there. It might take some time, and again, if Bitcoin's going to come down, it could come down deeper inside. But you can keep it on your radar if it does hold through this kind of area, around the 5 to 6 cents. This could be a decent mover at a later date. GP, again, one of those sort of strong, randomly strong ones. Like actually, this is kind of much stronger. Holds here will be nice. It's a high risk. You know, it's not got much price action, and it's had quite a few days of down now. Maybe as a blow off top, but could give a nice move from here if it holds. And you just need to watch the lower time frames and see if this is going to give you a lower time frame entry. ZK wasn't when it was a short entry. So this is one of the MEXC. I talked about this on the last stream actually, because the alert had just gone on the last stream for this. So I made the same comment that when you have the new MEXC coins, it's worth looking just for straight shorts off them. So this came up into daily supply and just dumped straight off it. This one's a little more aggressive, you know, that we made a 2-day supply, but again, these can quite easily work. Made a 2-day supply here, so I've had that alerted to the possibility of a short. So that's something to keep an eye on. It's not the best one, like I say, because it hasn't really closed. Like this was a more aggressive drop off this daily supply. This is not really that an aggressive drop off the 2-day. So something to keep an eye on for a short. Pepe Ontron. This I had the weekly drawn in a bit early, so the alert did say this weekly isn't confirmed, because I think when I actually set the alert, it was somewhere down here. And then obviously it then ran up in the interim, but I left the weekly alert and I said, look, there's other zones there because there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. So there's the weekly if it confirms. There's a 5-day if it confirms as well. That's another 2 days to confirmation. There's a 3-day also not confirmed, but that could confirm today. So if you get a little move higher, and I think I'll have a look at this a bit later, if it does confirm the 3-day supply, then we could get a short of that, but it's already got the 2-day. I think that's what I said in the alert, that it's a weekly supply, but it's got a whole bunch of other stuff going on, so it was worth just sort of watching in this area to see if it gets a rejection. SKL is another one that's just come into demand today, off monthly supply into weekly demand, not high probability. Gun. Not really enough price action to tell on this. The only thing I didn't like about this, I think, is that it's closed below that 3-month level. Now, this 3-month level is just from Binance candle when it opened, so other exchanges won't necessarily have that level. And if they do, it won't necessarily be in the same place, so it's not ideal as a level. But really, again, this is just following a downtrend, so there's less PA on it, and it is slower. Something to keep an eye on coming into support. WLD, what is this, WorldCoin? I'm quite sure. Again, not exactly showing a significant amount of strength off that push up there, but coming back into weekly demand. Quark, another one with less PA, might be another XC shitcoin. No, it's on a bunch of the exchanges, not on Binance, but it's on Bybit, BitGet, and a few other exchanges. Again, it's just a high risk, long possibility here. There's a decent amount of supply above, although it has already tested it a few times. I think that alert did go, but I reset it because it hadn't quite hit the level. But really, this is just a semi sort of guessing scenario. You know, you are in, again, a downtrend. It's just testing. So while it can look like I have a decent move up, it's just testing the local supply. So really, the trend is, the continuation is down, and whether it gives you like a move in between or whether it does reverse, you don't really know until you see whatever the reaction is off that level. Verse World. This was one I was trying to be too aggressive. I really thought we'd get, I think, a lower time frame on this. Not really thought, but I think I know. I was, to be fair, I was watching this. I had set an alert, I think, because there was a daily demand in here, or a 2-day demand. But I had also said, you know, I'd like to see this close above, because obviously it looked like it was rolling over. But, you know, at that point in time, it looked better. But obviously that didn't work anyway, and it's come back down into daily demand here. This is also not a high probability trade now. Now it's had that kind of distribution type thing. Would have been nice if it had gone up to supply. Hype we've already talked about. Hadel. This is an interesting one. I think that's worth an eye. Weekly demand in here. Again, like I say, you need to check, and there's a monthly a little bit below. So yeah, this is a nicer chart, and this you should keep on your radar. So monthly demand there. Weekly, it's just testing now. So if it gets a little bit of a drift lower into this monthly, I'm going to set an alert for that. I can remember to hopefully come back to it if it doesn't front run me. It's not the world's best monthly, but I've seen worse have decent reactions. So still need to go through and chart what supplies in there. But yeah, this could give a nice move up. Dude. Not the ones anyone's guessed. One thing I haven't really commented on actually so Dude, you can see the trend line stops here. And then I haven't really commented on, like I have spoken about it on the majors a little bit in the past, but the challenge with some of these was whether to alert these, thinking that they could go through all these stops. I won't go back into the show you the majors again now, but if you look at the majors, you'll see the same. You know, they had this kind of grind up before they broke out, and they left their weekly, monthly demands at around that same area. So again, it's quite hard to judge, and it really will just be timing based. You know, if Bitcoin's in the right place when they hit these zones, then it's probably going to be fine. If Bitcoin isn't in the right place, then they're probably going to wick through and take out all the stops first. Yeah, something like this is not necessarily high probability, but you can keep an eye on it. So any of these, you know, that hit demand, I can't really. It's hard to differentiate. And this is also, sorry, I should really reiterate, this is why I say look at the watch list. Like, don't necessarily, you can use the alerts if you're getting them, but look at the watch list and sort your watch list by what's going up and what's going down, because those are otherwise it's going to be very hard to judge what's going to move. And part of my point with saying that was there are those 10 to 20 that are moving each day of your 700 watch list, or even of your personal 25 to 30, if you've got smaller subset watch lists, how do you know which one's going to move? And either something I don't, like the volume stuff used to work better, but I don't have access to any actually good volume monitors anymore, but that used to be a good indication. I do have actually, which is something I need to investigate a bit more. What we do have, hold on, let me find the right place. What we do have now on TradingView is a watch list alert. So I did set up this new channel, alerts, which I was hoping the group would test for me, but nobody's currently come back to me with feedback yet, and I haven't had a chance to look at it in detail myself. But for example, obviously, Gorilla, BSC we saw going up, TROLLSOL, IDEX I haven't looked at, EGT, these are all going up 10% in 2 bars, and there's going down as well. You can see DUC that we did look at, KORI that we looked at. The part of the purpose of having this list was if anybody is more of a scalper or wants to jump in early onto things pumping and breaking out, was this is showing, on the 1 hour chart, it's in 2 bars because I think you have to do it. I think that's just the way I had to set up the alert. But it's basically to show anything that's rising 10% in an hourly chart. And then if people want to FOMO in to things that are just starting to move, that might help. So I guess what would be nice to see in conjunction would be for something to be on my, for example, this, liquidity, okay, it's hit a daily demand, and then to see it come out in that watch list later, and then you're kind of like, okay, liquidity, I know hit a demand, right now it's gone up 10%, then look for the re-entry. Other than that, like we have to go back to the days where we used volume monitors and things like that. Yeah, so and like I say, I don't know any good volume monitors. But yeah, so a lot of these I'm all saying, they're hitting demand, they're hitting demand, they're hitting demand. Like some of them are better demands than others, some of them are stronger than others. Like liquidity here is in 3 months supply, so this one I probably wouldn't suggest you look for a long on. Mudang we were talking about earlier, this has also hit an alert. Daily demand here, don't love it, weak demand, but might give a run. But overall, still in 3 months supply as well. But like, how do we know which one's going to run? That's very, very hard to know, and that's why I say that probably the best course of trading at the moment is to look at what's run already and then short it back down, or jump in next day if you're going to get a continuation of the next day. No, you're not going to get in these. You're going to miss them. But it's very hard to get in those. It's very hard to know, because you'll see some of these charts are just, in fact, Gods was probably a good example. Not far up my list. You see it. I mean, yes, it's giving you 4 hour demand, but with hindsight, you can kind of go, yeah, but you don't know that it's going to throw a massive green candle. It made a number of 4 hour demands here, and it did very, very little. So to know that it's suddenly going to be the one that pumps, and is that a pump group, or one of the big influencers pumping that? They're going, oh, God, looks nice, and then the next thing you know, you've got a whole bunch of people jumping into it. Yeah, so like for me anyway, it's not easy. So I think while you can look at these alerts as they hit, when the market is being more volatile, it's harder to choose which ones are going to be the ones that run until like after they've run. So even like Nuke's actually a nice example. So this hit my alert here and came back, didn't actually come back into demand in this case, but this is something, that either it hits the alert and probably in this case would have been on that top gainers list as well. Then it comes back down, then you look for a re-entry, and okay, this is nothing on the 4 hour, but maybe there's an hourly or something in there, and then you try and get in the next section of it. Or if it hits an alert, plus is already run, is on the top gainers list and is already in supply, then you look to short it back down, as I said. So there's the 2 options. Like some of them you can FOMO in later. Let's try and look for some of those actually that maybe you could have FOMO'd in. Can't really remember. We already looked at, it's really not doing anything, because there were a couple. Unfortunately, it's hard to remember. There were a couple that were running that I was trying to. So Zora was one of them at least. Where's Zora? Zora's gone quiet in the room. I'll try and find Zora. Yeah, so something like this, top gainers list. This in this case hit the alert for all-time high. Then I looked for the long entry on the retest, and that did give a decent move off there, and is now sort of thinking about coming back down to the next level. Yeah, so yeah, that's crazy. God, that's insane. Startup was one that I tried to, so I tried to get the breakout here, tried to get the retest to give something eventually, but then failed here. Then looked for the short entry, and now we're coming back down again. So again, these can give you at least the other thing the top gainers and losers will give you is the volatility. So to actually get decent trades, yes, you might get some wrong like I did here, but then when you finally get the decent trade, then you get a decent move down in this case. Unfortunately, I can't remember which. I don't really want to go through all of them. AIOT, I think, was one that might have failed. Yeah, I'd like to show some failures as well. So I did have a short on this. Actually, never really broke that supply that I wanted the short on, but I was looking for long re-entries. Again, it had 5-day demand, so it was worth considering in here, but it's come all the way back through. Just now, trend lines. Got to watch the trend lines. Trend lines, they can just roll off the trend lines. But I thought here, I was hoping, I think, when it got to that one, I think I was hoping this would at least give me a retest, but nothing on that. There was AIOT and there was Annie, I think was the other one. Esports I've already shown you. Humor. I think this was just a nice volatility one. Yeah. Humor, nice volatility. Short off here, then it came back down into demand. Long entry didn't get so far, and now it's come back down lower. So again, like this, I think would have been certainly one that came up on the big gainer list, and I'm like, oh, it's coming up into supply. Just set an alert there, or just look for shorts there, and then where might it bounce if it comes back down to demand? Anyway, there were quite a few more that were like Zora that I was trying to get in. The only other one springing to mind is SHX. What I would say is don't get disheartened, because this hasn't been an easy market, and even for me, where like most of my probabilities on the alerts are good, and the ones that don't work, I can kind of say, well, obviously something had changed, or they weren't in the right place of the market, or the structure, because I set these alerts quite often a very long time before. So like this alert, for example, would have been set probably back over here sometime, and I don't necessarily get back to look at all of them before they go off, which is why I say everybody has to do their own analysis. Yeah, so SHX is another one. So again, it was looking, this had already had that big move up. It had swing failed here, so it was a bit tenuous, but it didn't have any supply to look for shorts. So again, long entry on daily demand, and I put a second long entry there, and it has come back a bit lower, but again has held. So those are the ones, that's how you sort of find the ones that are moving anyway. Anyway, I've been going almost 2 hours, and I haven't had any comments today or any chatter, which makes it slightly less interesting than normal. And I want to go and have dinner, so I will sign off now. Hope that's useful. Like I say, as always, you can put any requests in chat if you want for me. I might have a quick look at SUI before I go, because I tend to always get asked from SUI, so it's worth having a quick look at that chart. Oh gosh, this was so long. See what the SUI is doing. Okay, so this did actually wicked through and took out this 2-month supply. Might end up just having been a fake out. So what we had in November last year. That made a monthly. So it has closed just above this level to potentially make a monthly demand there, and has wicked through that supply. What we had when we had the November run last year was a lot of stuff went through monthly supply, but then at the end of the year it closed back below, so it wasn't great. So this potentially is similar to what's happened there. So this was, I think, about the 2 monthly supply in there, like I said, and it's just hasn't really closed significantly above. However, the 2 month chart is still. Hi guys, yay, people are talking to me. Rose was a top signal. Rose is great for that. Anyway, so we still have this 2 month supply. So this it's still got another month to close the next 2 months. So we'd have to see how the 2 month closes to see whether it actually ends up as a swing failure or whether it actually flips this 2 month to demand. In its favor, it's closed over this level, so it does have a monthly demand there. I swear I just made that a line, but no. I think when I looked at this last, I was asked to look at the BTC pair, and I think I didn't really like the BTC pair, but I think I was quite indecisive on it. I can't remember exactly at what point in time it was, might have been around here, so it obviously has gone up since then, but I think just with the triangle and that pattern, and overall, this is, the measure of how bullish you are is whether you think, we're in a similar scenario to here, where we're just going to continue up. So this is just a consolidation, and we're just going to continue up. Or whether you think this is an A, B, C, like corrective pattern. And as I've been saying, so on the others chart, I'm erring on this being a corrective pattern to go down lower. But I also think that a lot of alts are going to do their own thing. I think some alts, and there'll be a chunk of them that look very much like that. And even from the ones I looked at from those alerts earlier, some of those look very, very bearish, particularly the ones where the long entries have come in, because obviously they're the ones that have fallen more into the long zones. I should probably say one other comment. One thing I always say with the group is if alerts come in when the whole market's dropping, and I don't think this is actually that dramatic a drop yet. Maybe it'll become one. But when the whole market's dropping, we get a bunch of alerts coming in, and that we shouldn't take the first set. Like generally, we'll get 1, 2, and possibly even 3 waves of long entries coming in. And it's exactly what I said on the majors earlier, that while some of these, we've got Doggy on 5-day here, we've got the Link that's on a 12-hour kind of floating, we've got BNB that's in a daily but kind of floating. If things aren't ready, if the market isn't, if not all things are at all demands at the same time, then we won't see that wholesale change of direction. We might see some small bounces, we're not going to get the huge change of direction that we want on everything. So what we tend to find when that happens is that we get alerts hit. So we've had DOT hit today, we've had Litecoin hit, although arguably that was me putting in a much more aggressive entry. But yes, Matt, we've had a lot. We had a lot of alerts hit. So we're in that sort of first phase where things are starting to hit. And then what we'll tend to find is that we either get a bounce and then we get another wave. And it's the same. Yeah, it's an AVC wave potentially. It's not really ABC by chart terms, but ABC from my alerts terms. That we do tend to get waves of alerts coming in, and I don't know how many we've had today, but there's been a lot over the last 24 hours anyway. There's no way I can count them anyway. There's been heaps. But we normally get a second wave. The only thing with the different waves of alerts, I have to say, is that I'm not sure I've got enough alerts in. What do I have? Because I keep running out. I've still got at least 400 alerts in there, along with 400 on the price alerts. I've got 373 out of 400 on the price alerts. So I've still got 680 alerts in there. God knows where they all are. I always think way more should hit, given how many I have. But I don't know. Like I don't know if they're all hiding off the tops of charts. And I'm totally going to upgrade on the next Black Friday though. I'm just hoping they actually give a decent discount on the plan that I need to upgrade to, because at the moment they keep only doing a 60% discount, but 70 and 80% on everything else. So I keep getting stubborn and refusing to pay it. But yeah, or maybe they'll do a package where they just add more alerts for you. I have no idea how I fit it all in that. This is why I'm always so wired and about to kill myself. But I don't know. I also feel I'm also just super OCD. Well, you have a job. I don't have a job. Well, this is my job. But also, to be fair, I do it very quickly. So when I'm running through all the alts, I'm literally kind of going, like I have to put in all the zones, but I'm quickly going, you know, where are the new supply, where are the new demand? Okay, quick, there's demand there, 5-day demand, put an alert. I don't tend to go all the time frames. I'll kind of acknowledge that there's, in this case, there's a trend line stops, and I might or might not write that in the alert. Let's see. No, sometimes I just put 4-5-day demand, and then I expect people to do their own analysis. And similarly, you know, as and when they hit, is the market in the right place? Like here, for example, you know, that would have been wave 1 when we're talking about waves, did give a decent move. That would have been wave 2. You know, and then the whole market's ready to reverse, and then you're starting to get the reversal entries. But a lot of the blind entries, like similar to these here, to me kind of going, okay, just let's put aggressive, you know, I was even looking for a long here in case we broke out. It's just aggressive scalping the volatility. But for the most part, it's just entries, and I just sort of throw them in as and when, so they're quite random on the chart sometimes. I tend to get rid of the best ones, tend to be my short entries after reversal. So like this, for example, or this, they're the tightest ones, and they'll give the biggest moves. I'm less good at the long version, and also longs I think tend to screw you around a bit more. Shorts, once we're ready to go, we tend to go. But longs are more likely to do stuff like this and just do similar to the majors, you know, do those horrible patterns that we had at the lows. And July, I think, because actually not got it here, but yeah, with some of them I think were coming on there, and I think Litecoin did actually hold here, but no, and it was actually this area. Some were coming through, they were coming through the 3-day demands and then bouncing but not quite getting to the 12-hour below, so just generally being quite awkward on the reversal. Anyway, how are you doing, Realised Bear? Taking it all in? If you're still there. You notice shorts usually get front run or just fall from high time frame supply. Usually I would say no, actually. Sometimes. When they do crazy things like touch, then yes. But no, actually, and one of the reasons I started doing adding in the 4-5 day, so weeklies were getting front run, or they were just going like here, for example. I mean, that had an indirect weekly, to be fair, but sometimes they were just going and not coming back up to test weeklies. So I kind of did realize that I needed to do 5-day and 4-day supplies, but normally we do get retests of 5-day and 4-day supplies. And on this drop we've had now is very, very early days. So yeah, I don't know. We still potentially can go up, and like again, you weren't watching earlier in the stream, but if you were talking about, I was talking about earlier in the stream, this pattern on all the charts, it's kind of like this. This is not the nicest one on SUI though. Which one was I shooting for? The Litecoin one, see. It's really annoying sometimes. They just move whenever you. This pattern here, where we kind of went back up, made a new low, and then went and tested. And in some cases, so I said from where we are now, I can potentially seeing this type of pattern happen, where we go up, we test the sort of 3-day, 5-day supply, we drop down a bit lower, and then we go and test the 12-hour supplies above. Not sure about that. We'll have to see what happens, but I feel like we might get some sort of weird move like this based on what I'm seeing on supply. Or you're right, and we just don't get tested. They don't get tested. But like, bear in mind here, for example, that, you know, you would have gone, oh, it didn't retest, but it did come back and test it later, is my point. And it also gave a lot, like, there were a lot of retests in the top section. But it just depends, a lot of it depends on the time frame you're looking at. So if you look at 4-5 day supply, it's better to or 3 days. But sometimes weeklies, just running, they run too fast. I think back here they were running really, really fast. So that's, yeah, the start of the year. Running fast here. This didn't come back and test there, but if there was a 4-5 day, it potentially did. But then it did come back and test after. Again, the challenge. Anyway, do you guys have any requests before I go and have dinner? God, it's 8 o'clock now. 2-hour stream. And do some testing on AI to see if it can make any cool shorts out of my stream today. Whether it's worth the money. Anyone? Nope. No, we have silence. Okay, I'm going to sign off then. Have a great weekend, everyone. I might do an FX stream, if either of you care. I might do an FX stream over the weekend if I can, just to go over the results from all of those, because I need to get rid of the crosses off my charts. XRP, why not? Do I think it will go to the 2-day? I suspect it will, actually, because it's XRP. But normally I don't say that again. You've probably heard me say this before, that normally I don't. People say, will it go there? I don't know. If it goes there, then I will look for a short. Will it go there? I don't know. But given you're asking me about XRP specifically, like, yes, I think it probably will. And it could, well, I mean, XRP could still break out from here. Still in an uptrend, and it's just a quick correction of that uptrend holding daily demand. It could still very easily break out. Still worth looking for the short there in case it's a swing failure of all-time high, on the previous all-time high. And I don't know, you won't have seen this realized there, but the I put this in the channel. I think I saved it. Yeah. I was like, what if it's a giant ripple triangle consolidation die pattern? Because, you know, so again, this is the pattern that I've talked about before, you know, that's the triangle and then the consolidation die. And then, you know, what if this whole thing is now a triangle die pattern? We need to be a bit careful of that. But yes, yeah, so Ripple does tend to like to do, and remember, Ripple tends to do it so everything else will move. And then remember, Ripple likes to be the final mover, particularly in corrections. So I think we need to wait, and Ripple could well be the top signal on a retracement when it gets up here. So we need to keep an eye on that. But yeah, anyway, I must go and have dinner because I'm starving to death. And yeah, hope you guys have a great weekend. Talk to you later. Ciao.